I'm Chris Coates, executive editor of the Times-Dispatch and Richmond.com. We're here this morning talking with Em Holter about the big issue on yesterday's ballot, and that was the casino referendum. It failed this time, as it did 2 years ago. I think that's the big headline, but what were the big surprises from yesterday's election day?
Well, I mean, casino supporters, developers put in a record-breaking $10 million. So the margin, I think it was about 24% by the last tallied votes. I don't think people expected to see such a drastic difference. So.
This was a $562 million project. $10 million was poured into a get out the vote effort by supporters. The background of this is the state in 2020 approved 5 licenses. The ones in Bristol, Portsmouth, and Danville have opened. One in Norfolk is also advancing. Voters rejected plans for a Richmond casino 2 years ago. What was different this year versus 2 years ago?
Well, they really focused heavily on that sort of voter-to-voter, door-to-door campaign instead, and they, Urban One, who was kind of leading the local charge in the first go-around, admitted, they focused heavily on TV and radio and all these advertisements, and instead they wanted to really kind of hit voters at their doors and talk to them and answer questions.
We saw a lot of support from businesses and labor, as well as faith leaders, civil rights groups for this project. It's fair to say the opposition was vastly outspent. What do you think delivered the win to that opposition group, if you had to narrow it down?
Well, I think Richmonders historically have not supported second referendums, and I think Richmonders kind of made them work for it a little bit. So I think that was kind of the big takeaway.
And to that point, we are crunching some of the precinct data this morning. At first glance, where was the support? Where was maybe the opposition?
Similarly to the first referendum, the 8th and 9th districts, where the project was proposed, is where they saw the most support, and then in the first, second, that's where they saw most of the opposition votes. But they failed to secure part of the 3rd and a little bit of the 7th district, which they did have in the first go around.
What happens next? Where does this go?
Well, Urban One's CEO Alfred Liggins said, this is probably going to go back up to the state because there is one bid. So it's kind of in the state's hands at this point.
Well, we'll be watching that very closely. Thank you, Em. Coverage of election results continues at Richmond.com. I'm Chris Coates with the Times-Dispatch. Thanks for joining us.